So like Lauren mentioned, so I'm going to talk to you guys about the anatomy of a performance audit, but more from a marketer's perspective. Mainly because I think as marketers, our roles have changed a bit. We need to understand the technicalities a little bit as well. So I know we are all about the look and feel of stuff, but then there's a massive load of stuff that happens in between and also in the back end. So I'll try and keep it less technical and more practical. So let's see how it goes. So just a bit about myself, not trying to brag, but founder and CEO of a couple of companies, one in Malaysia and one in Colombo. Just got a couple of awards as well. One of the top 50 influencer marketing leaders in 2016. I got the Intuit Marketing Award. Really passionate about lecturing and sharing my knowledge, whatever I have. So I do a little bit of part-time lecturing as well. And I'm really interested about technology and been in marketing for the last 20 plus years. So moving on. So we need to get our house in order. That's what I tell my clients. That's what I tell my teammates as well. So we need to make sure that Google actually sees you and hears you. I know we all know that Google is the #1 search engine and followed by YouTube, which is #2, both owned by Google, interestingly. But just to put something in perspective, I think it's always good to look at numbers. So these are the stats from February 2021. So Google, these are the mobile searches across the world. So we have about 95.03 of the searches coming from Google, followed by Baidu, Yahoo, Yandex, DuckDuckGo, and Bing. So we talk about other search engines, we talk about ad blocking, we talk about a lot of things, but hands down, Google dominates. So as the line goes, let's cut the crap, let's optimize for Google. It's a default. So we really need to look at how we optimize our sites for Google, and also how do you actually assess the performance side of things. There are some new things that are coming up. I'm not going to talk about the traditional SEO stuff that we all know, but there are some interesting stuff that's happening in the performance side of things. So one of the key things is called Core Web Vitals. So these are actually known as page experience signals that are actually becoming ranking factors. So Google have just announced that from May this year, these are some of the things that we need to look at as marketers as well as SEOs. So as you know, most people browse a website through a mobile. So the bottom 4 items that I've mentioned here are stuff that we all know. We want to make our site mobile friendly. We want to enable safe browsing, a little bit of security through HTTPS. We don't want any pop-ups coming up. I still do see a few on and off, but especially on mobile experiences, if pop-ups come up, Google doesn't like it. So we all know that. But on top of this, there are 3 key things that Google actually want us to look at. And those are called the Core Web Vitals. Starting off with your loading speed. So there is a term called LCP, or the largest contentful paint. I'll explain that later on, what that means. And also number 2 is interactivity, which is measured by FID, or first input delay. And number 3 is visual stability, which is measured through CLS, or cumulative layout shifts. So these 3 factors will come into play in May. And also an interesting factoid is a Google study, I think over 1 million of page impressions, found that a site that actually meets the recommended thresholds for the core web vital metrics, the users who come to a site like that are 24% less likely to abandon a page before it finishes loading. So we want people to stay longer. We want people to spend more time on a site. So the core web vitals, if you haven't heard of it, search for it today. It's going to be important in May. So this is a little bit more of a deep down on that. So the key metrics that you need to keep in mind from May 2021. So these are the 3 things that I mentioned earlier. So LCP, or your largest contentful paint. So this basically means the time taken for a page's main content to load. So ideally, it should be about 2.5 seconds or faster. So you want a page to load within 2.5 seconds. We used to have this metric saying less than 3 seconds, but now it's been formalized 2.5 seconds. There's the second metric, which is called first input delay. This is basically the time taken for a page to become interactive. So this should be ideally less than 100 milliseconds. So pretty quick. And then finally, the cumulative layout shift, which essentially means, when you go to certain websites, you click on buy now, it takes you back to another page, or it takes you back to something else and the page doesn't work properly. The layout starts to shift. So ideally, the score for this should be 0.1. So these are the 3 key things that are coming up in May 2021, which you need to keep in mind. The other thing that we need to look at, again, we might have the most beautiful website in the world, but if our content or if our data is not structured, it's not going to be good, because what Google sees is what you see on the left of this. What we see is what we see on the right of this screen. So we need to make sure Google sees us first. And Google loves when the data is structured. Back in the day, we used to build websites to basically fool Google a little bit. But Google now, they've got the rank brain going. They've got a lot of signals coming up. They look at a lot of things and you can't outmaneuver them. You have to play the game accordingly. So you need to really look at how you structure your content. So the example I have here, I put out a few titles and meta tags and headers and whatnot from a recipe or a cooking recipe. So for example, the title is Party Coffee Cake. The type is, it's a recipe. The name is Party Coffee Cake. And there's a few people names as well. And then your H2 or your header 2 says Party Coffee Cake recipe by Mary Stone. The date is there. There's a few more descriptions. This coffee cake is awesome and perfect for parties. Preparation time 20 minutes. Imagine you searching for a recipe for a coffee cake. And if I just said coffee cake, I'm not going to click on it. But this schema or this structured data is actually very useful to standardize and provide explicit clues about your content to Google. So this is how you tell Google how to structure stuff, or how you structure stuff so that Google sees things properly. Again, a bit of a text-heavy slide, but basically your meta tags. Your meta tags are basically what your pages or your website is about, and how are you going to tell Google to read it, and who should see it. So I just took the liberty of taking the Malaysia Web Awards website for 2021. I just went through the meta tags. So the 2 key things for me is your meta description and the titles. So your description, currently says something like 12th to the 27th December 2021. The objective of MWA is to discover blah, 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 developers, SEO specialists, and in the country kind of thing. So what I'm trying to say here is your meta description has to be contextual. It has to be written in proper English. You shouldn't stuff any keywords. So one part of this site is good because it's a proper English grammar sentence. But the other side is this how people search for? If I want to apply for an award, I would search for Malaysia Web Awards. So you need to have that in your keywords. So again, in your meta description, in your header tags, your title tags, you need to have the relevant keywords. You don't need to stuff it, but you need to look at the relevance. Google operates on one key principle, which is relevance. And relevance is then broken down into many things. It can be your speed, it can be the UI UX side of things, it can be how the content is structured. So all that boils down to relevance. So that's why your meta tag should be relevant to what your users are searching for. This is something that we all do on and off, which is voice search. Last year or 2 years ago, this was something that was up and coming, but now it's a given. It's here. So if you look at the graph that I have on the left, these are some of the voice assistants plus the number of searches that are happening in billions. right? So in 2023, we are hoping to get about 8 billion searches purely through voice search. So how do you actually optimize a website for voice search? I take my phone, I speak to Siri, or I speak to my Alexa device. How do I optimize a website for that? This is where long tail comes in. In SEO, there are two key things. One is your short keywords, one is your long tail. People are nowadays smarter, especially with voice search. What happens is people start searching for longer terms, not just 1 to 3 words, but it's actually longer. It's about how things work, what's the closest thing next to me, what time does this restaurant open. So you need to have certain elements on your website optimized for that. The best way is to look at your FAQs or your fact sheet, where you can ask those questions and provide the answer then and there itself, so that you optimize your site for conversational search, not just for search. So this is something interesting that's coming up. So just keep in mind when you develop sites, especially for FMCG or even I don't see this happening for B2B much, but B2C, you'll see a lot of these conversational stuff happening. And you need to keep that in mind. Next one up is page speed. So speed is key. I mean, this is something that we all look for. From a CX or even from a UX perspective, this is something that we all need to look out for, because it has a direct correlation with a user bouncing off, right? It's a key noise factor. So as page load time goes, 1 to 3, if your page loads within 1 to 3 seconds, your bounce increases by 32%. If your page loads within 1 to 5 seconds, that increases by 90%. By the way, this data is from Google. If your page loads within 1 to 6 seconds, your bounce increases by 106%. And if your page load speed is between 1 to 10 seconds, so the higher end of it, the bounce rate increases by 123%. So bounce rate is defined as a user coming to a site or a page and leaving that page. This doesn't apply to PPC, but it applies to general SEO or search. So how do you actually mitigate this? There are lots of ways to do it. Reduce the heaviness of your site, increase your server capacity. There's a lot of stuff you can do, but speed is a key factor. So it's actually one of the key factors in a performance audit as well. And there are, under speed, you look at other things like, like your average speed index, your average time to first byte, and when you optimize, you need to look at your average request count. Then you need to look at the heaviness, like I said, the weight of the site. So these are some of the key things that Google wants us to look at. And it's actually very, very relevant. I'll also leave you guys with some tools that you can use. Good news is these are free. So one of the first tools that you need to look at is Google Lighthouse. It's actually starting point of any audit that we do as marketers these days. It provides you with a performance scope, accessibility, best practices, SEO, as well as the overall progressiveness of your web apps. Again, I took the liberty of taking the MWA site. I know the MWA guys are going to hit me now, but I've just done a basic audit using Lighthouse. Whilst accessibility, best practices, and SEO are quite good, performance is not so great. So that's something that we need to work on, MWA. But again, this is the level of stuff that you have as a marketer nowadays. Whilst you are looking at the creative side, it's no point if you have the best looking site if the site is not performing, or if it's not loading, or if it's bouncing, or if the traffic is coming in but they are not interacting. So the good news about Lighthouse is there is a Lighthouse scoring calculator, and it gives you a score on what needs to be improved. So basically it breaks down this score of 12 and tells you where to fix. So there are some speed stuff, the LCP is not so great, interactive time is not so great, total blocking time. So these are things that a developer can then fix. Ideally, when you start building a site, you should start thinking about these things. But once you build it, if you want to do audit, this is a good starting point. The second tool that I would go for is Google Page Speed Insights. So this looks at different pages of your website. Again, it's free. It's a developer tool, but non-developers can also use it. You just put the URL there and it gives you the page speed score. And according to this, it's got a 10 for mobile. So you can actually look at mobile as well as desktop. And the good thing is it tells you what fixes need to be done. So that's what we need, even from a creative or a designer or a developer. This is where you get the whole team together. You tell them, look, guys, my page speed is XYZ. I'm getting a score of 10. I need to improve this. So this is what you do. And this is the number 2 tool that I would go for when it comes to a performance audit. And finally, the third tool, most of the marketers, especially the digital marketers, will know this, but this is actually not related to speed or anything, but it's about the intent of the user. So if you go to your search ads or your ad console, there is a tool called the keyword planner. Here you can actually look for certain keywords people are searching for per country and find out what other things people are searching for. So this is where you identify your current content, what people are searching for, and look at the gaps. So again, I've taken the liberty of looking for how many keywords people are searching, how many words people are searching for. So when you type Malaysia Web Awards, for the last 12 months, there's been about 70 monthly searches average for this particular keywords. So essentially, these are people who are looking for this website. There are other searches that are happening, what Google is telling us, Philippines Web Awards, Pakistan Web Awards, Jordan Web Awards, you can dig deeper. It also tells me which states, so most of the searches are coming from Selangor, followed by KL, Sarawak, and Johor. So this actually, so there is another set that comes underneath this. So apart from the particular word I want to look for, it also tells me what are the other relevant searches people are looking at. So that's where you have a hybrid of what people are searching for and what you have done, and you look at the gaps. It's no point creating something if people are not searching for, unless it's a thought leadership piece. In B2B and all, you might usually do, IoT 4.0 or IIoT 4.0, something like that, which is very futuristic thought leadership kind of stuff. That is fine. People might not necessarily know that, it's not an innovation yet. However, if there are certain things that your customers are already searching for, and if your content is not written accordingly, then you need to fix that. So the third and the final tool that I would recommend to anybody is the keyword planner. Right, so I've got a couple of quotes to leave with you. So one of the things from Adi Osmani, who is a product guy from Google Chrome, what he says is if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. So data is key for us. Try and see, this is basically taken from a tweet that he made recently. This is, he has looked at one of the Google websites itself, Chrome, and what's the first byte, what's the first paint, first contentful paint. So he's looking at all the numbers and trying to figure out how to improve things. So again, a really good quote: if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And then finally, this guy, he's the god of SEO, Matt Cutts. So your SEO is like your resume. You polish it so that you have the best foot forward. So that's about it from me. I think I can stop now. If there are any questions that I can answer, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Thanks again, Celia, for your presentation. I love how in-depth it was. You guys who are tuning in right now, let's give him a virtual round of applause. Congratulations. Congratulations on your very well presented presentation here. And of course, I like the fact that you actually brought the MW. So we could never be mad at you. And you know why? Because I think it's initiatives like this that you show us where to plug the holes in our boat. That is something that money can't buy. So thank you for that. We could never be mad at you. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
So thank you so much. And I think everybody else in the chat box is also expressing the fact that they love your presentation as well. And I think because we're running a little bit short on time and we don't have any questions, how can we get in contact with you, just in case any of our attendees here might want to do that? Celia, can you hear me? Celia, can you hear me? Hello? You guys in the audience can hear me, right?
Oh, would you mind repeating that, Laurie?
Okay, so I asked how can people get in contact with you just in case they have some questions?
Oh, email is fine. Shall I just type something in here?
Absolutely, you can leave it in the chat box right here.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that. No worries. So I'll just put my email down right now, and then maybe people can just reach out to me. No problem.
Absolutely. Of course, it's time to bid you adieu. Thank you so much for being part of the Malaysia Website Awards for the year 2020. It's been a joy to talk to you. I hope you're keeping safe on your end, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks again for the opportunity. Take care, guys. Be safe.
Absolutely. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.